Class, this is Dr. Peter Terzop, or probably better said, students. Got one that called me and asked about grading. And one thing that always troubles me with grading is the push in education as we celebrate students' responses because of diversity, not in any context like normally, but diversity as in people answer things differently, not like based off race or nationality, gender. That's a political thing. I'm talking about each person has a different concept of how to develop something or explain something, and I think that makes it enjoyable for professors. For example, I read maybe 50 to 120 essays that are similar, and I do this each week, and that can get old really quick, right? So, I've talked about how professors look at patterns and how they look at, are things organized correctly? Do they look good? There's a lot of optics to these things. Do the sources look good? Do they look like they're blended in? And I mean, the dirty secret is, professors don't read every word. Okay, I don't care what they say; it's a lie. If they're an English teacher, maybe they can, maybe they do that. Okay, but most professors are looking at, they're taking pictures and they snap a little bit here and there. And what's important here is that it's very, very good to see this diversity in student writing. Not only one, it keeps you awake and it teaches you as a professor. Like, I learned from reading things. Well, I didn't know that source existed and I never thought of it that way. And some of it is repetitive and that's normal, but that's okay. But on the teaching side, everyone starts, well, not everyone, but a lot of people, they really start looking at it like, well, professors should all grade the same. Like, there's this rubric and there's these metrics, and magically human beings all come together and they're standardized and they all give the same feedback and they give the same level. It just doesn't work that way. So we can't celebrate this uniqueness of students writing, but then the professors have to be all rigid, standardized, robotic, and all that. That doesn't happen. That's not how the real world works. There's going to be some professors that you click with better, and there's some that don't. If you haven't ever had this issue in the real world, you haven't been in the real world. It just is the way it is. So rubrics were entered in to say, okay, here is a objective looking number so that you feel like there's something objective. In reality, someone has to plug these numbers in, and that's a subjective process. Unless it says, if you make 2 grammar mistakes, you do this, and 4 grammar mistakes, you get this. Well, how easy is it to find a grammar mistake, or what I interpret as a grammar mistake? The point being is, even objective objectives or objective metrics, even they can fall flat. And that yes or no thing can either you get all the points or you don't get all the points. It's kind of like military go, no go systems and double no goes. They're not very feedback oriented and they're not all that indicative of what's really going on. It's just, can you do the task or not? You get a couple chances and then you're done. Whereas in grading, there is a lot of subjectivity to that. And some people don't like that, and they don't like it because of the grade they got. My favorite one is, if I give written feedback or video feedback, if they don't like the grade, I'll always have a student come back and go, I want the opposite. I don't like your feedback, and I don't like how you do it. But when they were getting good grades, everything was cool. But then when they get a bad grade, now magically they want every point broken down, every little thing, every little dot, and they want to argue. Which, because once you give them the opposite, then they come back and argue, and that's not helping anything. And that goes back to that video where professors, not that I do this, but I know professors who will get those 10 points back. They may give you the 10 points, or the dean says to give them the 10 points, but they will get those points back plus a few extra, just to make it clear. Okay, so I've seen that before. I'm not saying it's right. It's human nature, and they're going to do it. So, but the bigger key here is, sometimes the diversity or the feedback styles. Some professors are real big into breaking down every little thing, and some like to do it in writing, some like to do it in video, some like to do it in a mix. Some like to say, hey, here's a link, you can do it this way or that way. There's a lot of different feedback techniques, and there's some that you're going to like and some that you don't like and some that you can tolerate. That's life. Okay, that's just life. And what I would suggest to you is, um, try to get in contact with your professor. If there's any doubt after week 1 or 2, say it's a 6 week, 8 week, even 5 weeks. If it's 5 week course, you really want to get this down pat first week. If it's an 8 week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 at the most, so you have time to recover. But call the professor, email them. But the key is not to be Matlock and or a lawyer that Perry Mason, where you try to prove a point or prove something. It does. There's no winning with this. Okay, so what you want to do is get an understanding. Is this professor, do they take calls, emails? Do they give feedback? How are they give feedback? What are they wanting? What are their pet peeves? There's a lot of things that go into this. But one thing that does teach you is how do you prepare for the real world? If someone like a boss comes along and says, well, I want it this way and that way, well, that's how it's going to go. And if you don't like it, you can complain, but eventually they're going to say you got to go because that doesn't work. You can't just say, well, I'm here and I'm special and unique and just because I'm me. You have to learn how to work with those teams and work with those bosses. And if you don't like it, at the end of the day, you move on to another job. Well, in school, you get done with the class and you move on to another class. But you wouldn't want to leave a school just because you have one professor you didn't like, or you might not want to stay at a school just because you liked one professor. Okay. But that's one reason we started the education channel, because I'd have students that would move on and they still wanted that level of support and feedback. Well, obviously I can't keep providing feedback for the next, 2 or 3 years for every student that decides they want that. But I can give feedback through here to help the maximum number of students. So again, the big key is if you celebrate diversity or uniqueness of the process of student writing, then do that on the teaching side as well. Respect each other's positions. I have been a student. I have seen what it's like to work full time and try to keep a job and family and sports and all these cool, personal life, marriage, and then try to go to school. I mean, it's hard, but if it was easy, everybody would do it. Having said that, from a student perspective, think about it from a teacher's. They read hundreds of these essays. They do this every week. What are they looking for? What are the patterns? Look at it from their perspective. And they say, well, they're being paid to do it. Well, of course they are, but at the same time, they're looking for things that help them to speed up and save time and give proper feedback and, recognize where they're coming from, see their experiences and what they're trying to impart with you and convey. That's very, very important. So if there's anything else, I think that covers the topic given to me, but I do have a number of them I have to make. One of them's on politics, which I enjoy because we don't have to be political and all that. We just have to sit there and focus on um, how to support students and all that type of stuff. So I do appreciate that, and best of luck.